Hello and welcome to Random Offense, where we discuss the overlap of sports with business, culture, and yes, politics on occasion. In this show, we are joined by Mike Pesca of The Gist, the ideal person to assist us in this endeavor. Well, of course, except for all of you, because thanks to our trusty producer, Trace Crutchfield, you can ask questions and be part of the show. We would love to have you. But first, our main topic, our initial topic. Can the NBA save the WNBA? Whew, that's a subversive question in many quarters, just to suggest that the WNBA might need saving. And you know what? It might be too heavy a lift for the NBA. Even if there is this eagerly anticipated Game 7 of the finals, which we will discuss, many people have noticed that the production value has been maybe cheap, maybe tawdry. The nostalgia is not there for the NBA. They have lost half their viewership audience for these big events, so maybe they're beleaguered. Why should they be pulled in to help the WNBA, as I have suggested on my Substack? Now, one of my subscribers on the House of Strauss Substack had a rebuttal when I said that the NBA should come in and bring some order to the WNBA, and it was fairly crude, but I think you'll like it. So let me read it right here. A stray shot of sperm has endowed the WNBA with organic growth, garnering the true emotional attachment of new fans. So let's rush in with the exact same corporate vampires who drained every ounce of human attachment from their current responsibility. Yeah, that's fair. But my short answer is that at least the WNBA, at least the NBA, understands itself as a business, whereas the WNBA seems to understand itself and has conceived of itself for a long time as almost a nonprofit. So much so that when Caitlyn Clark arrives, instead of just being overjoyed by the attention and opportunities to make money, there is a widespread resentment within that institution towards her. And so now you're seeing the NBA start to get a little bit frustrated, and they want to rein it in. And I hear this behind the scenes. I hear that the NBA is not happy about this. They don't like seeing Caitlyn Clark get smacked around, manhandled, or handled, I should say, literally out there, because she is the golden goose, and that's something that they are interested in. And whatever you can say about the NBA, I do think they understand business to a degree. I do think they are invested in the idea of promoting stardom. So right now, they've been operating under this quasi-fiction that this is a separate league. It's kind of under their umbrella, but we don't really run it. And I don't know if that's going to do. They might need to do something different. So let's bring on Mike Pesca to discuss whether the NBA should get involved here, whether Adam Silver should get involved here to prevent Caitlyn Clark from getting smacked up. The only time Caitlyn Clark should get smacked up is symbolically and not literally, as she happened to have happened to her. Oh, that's quite a sentence I've said. As happened to her by the hand of my local Valkyries. Mike Pesca, nice to have you on.
The only time Caitlyn Clark should get smacked up is at the service of someone looking to get a Substack audience, let's say, or AM radio.
Indeed.
By the way, who are we, literally everyone on this planet, to denigrate the idea of one lucky sperm getting through? This explains us all.
I just like how it was put. So vulgar and yet so
arresting.
What a comment and what a point. I'm suggesting it. I like asking the questions that are out there that are maybe a little taboo for whatever reason. The elephant in the room. The elephant in the room to me, Mike, is that Adam Silver is grousing in these comments, and he's not doing it overtly, but there are these just little, I would have, liked to have seen her on the Team USA basketball team, but it's not my job. And I'd like, fairness for. I just realized that my voice for Adam Silver sounds a little bit like the Ben Shapiro imitation of Bernie Sanders, but that's neither here nor there.
Is he going to order soup? Ben Shapiro can't do it without Bernie sending back the soup.
I don't think Silver's voice, I don't think his accent is that thick, but there's something happening behind the scenes. And this is a little dangerous to get into without accusing anybody of anything. I said it on my Substack. There was a story out there about how poor the ratings were without Caitlyn Clark for the WNBA. And I happen to believe that story came from the league office. I can't prove it, but just based on where the story ended up, how the writer wasn't somebody who typically ever talks about these things, how the information seemed a bit proprietary. It looks like there's some angst from the NBA side with how the WNBA is handling things. Do they deserve to handle things better given how they've handled the league? What do you say, Mike?
Yeah, they definitely do. Adam Silver, you convinced me, or you make the good case with pointing to the fact that the USA Today writer almost never writes about the WNBA. He's extremely well sourced with the league. These numbers, this is a huge frustration for me. They only put out numbers when they're good.
Mm.
So and it's not just the officialdom of the leagues. I guess it's their right to do that, but they definitely control information. So we get some information out that cuts against the kumbaya narrative of the WNBA commissioner. Yeah, it does. It's enough to raise eyebrows. And Adam Silver, you know what he sounds like when he says, well, it's not my job to say. He sounds like a good Democratic president talking about the Justice Department, right? Well, I'm not
I thought you
really
were going to
allowed
say
to
a
go in there.
Democratic official talking about Joe Biden in
Yeah,
2024. But
separation of
continue.
church and state. They do what they do. But of
Mm.
course, the WNBA was run more like a charitable organization. Or, okay, maybe if that has a sheen of disrespect coming from me, a literal nonprofit, or a nonprofit is supposed to have zero balance on the books, a perennial loss of profit, and always had been, and different owners. I'm pretty sure this is true. There's no way that any of the owners of the team actually turned a profit per se. And then Caitlyn Clark comes along, and the NBA, and you make this point, they're at least a profit making organization. That's what they know how to do. And it strikes them as insane to insanely strike Caitlyn Clark. All the
Yeah.
commenters online in that Fever game where she was getting pre-Valkyries, where she was getting smacked around with, like, what NBA star ever gets treated like this? And the answer is sometimes Shaquille O'Neal, but never a wing. So, and
Yeah.
I don't mean that like a Dallas
Well,
wing. Yeah.
and I think that is more the result. It's less the result of the ambient hatred towards her in the league, because you'll see that played up in certain media outlets, and that's there. There is resentment towards her, but it's really, I think, more about the officials.
Yeah,
And they,
that's the point. And that's the one that implicates Silver, right? He could
yeah,
pay more for the officials.
yeah, you could actually run this like a whole league instead of a line item where you're just trying to save money, because it's almost like an outgrowth of NBA cares. And so I just love this topic because this thing has exploded. It's
Yeah.
now an object of national interest. People are making the argument that Caitlin Clark, when Steph and LeBron retire, is going to be the biggest American sports star. And it's this environment where many of the players, whereas I do think they want more money, they didn't necessarily want it to be a business with all that comes
Yeah.
from it. And same with some of the NBA owners who run these teams. The Valkyries, aforementioned, are doing well. And what I'm hearing from the Warriors people who run the Valkyries is there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, because these NBA owners never really conceived of themselves as actually running this thing, or this was just kind of, again, it's a line item. So in a way, it's almost like nobody from either side wanted this to become a business, but in Jurassic Park fashion, life finds a way, Mike.
Yeah. Caitlin Clark opening the doorknobs, amazing, Velociraptor-esque. Yes, you're right. For years, it was like, well, we're going to fund this as a business, and a fair dollop of denying that they're losing money, but never really believing it's going to be a business. And then when it is a business, they don't quite know what to do with it. I think it's
Yeah.
the NBA, that WNBA, that's more confused, but Adam Silver, who at least has business instincts, is unsure how to wade in and say, well, actually, if we're going to be realistic about this, and if we're going to protect our assets, we have to start treating them as assets. I tuned in to the Clark Valkyrie game after the Pacers OKC game 6. And I have to say, I don't think that if I was watching some other sport and it was, 10 or 10:30 at night, other than Caitlin Clark, I would not tune in if it popped up on my Apple TV Plus for most any other sport regular season game between a 6-5 and a 5-6 team. So yeah, of
Mm.
course she drives interest. Of course she's as big as all but 2 or 3 players in the NBA. And if the WNBA doesn't realize this, the NBA has to realize it for them, as patriarchal as that is.
Yeah, so patriarchal, nearly sexist for them to come in and pull rank and say we're running this thing, and it's not being run oh so
Like
well.
the Longhouse, right?
We are tired of being in the longhouse. It's time to assert the NBA's masculinity. over these arguing women. Yes, that
That's
version of
good.
Adam Silver would be quite interesting, I think. Do you have
I
any
just want him
take?
to adopt all these right-wing memes, And now on to
Ooh, that
the
would be
issue
fun.
of breeding.
That would be quite fun. I do think Adam Silver had a kid in his 50s, so you could see that completely changing his perspective on life. But do you have any takes on the NBA right now before we start getting some questions from people? Is this finals to your liking? Exciting, game seven, other people grousing? I'm excited. Are you excited?
I love it. I love it. As a Knicks fan, I kind of thought I'd be resentful of the Pacers going through. Quite the opposite. They're so fun. They're full of fun.
They are.
And the Knicks, though I love the Knicks, Jalen Brunson, once he gets the shot off, it's usually at an interesting angle, but it's not necessarily fun, not as unfun
Hmm.
as the black hole of the Patrick Ewing era. But all the Pacers, from your Nemhards to your Siaka, that's the plural of Siakam, they're all so much fun. In fact, I was emailing with a NBA expert friend of mine, and I said, everyone in this series is fun. I love Lou Dort. I love Caruso. The
Hmm.
only unfun guy, and he's not unfun, he just isn't fun, isn't the first thing you'd ascribe to him, is SGA. Kind of,
Hmm.
deserves to be MVP, but not really a fun player. There was a sequence with about 4 minutes left in the first half of last night's game where Halliburton steals the ball, which is amazing. And then they do a quick outlet pass,
Oh
maybe to
yeah, this is great.
Siakam. Yeah, maybe to Nesmith. 4 minutes left. Doesn't touch the ground. Bing, bing, bing. And they go up by 10. By the way, they're up by 22 at halftime. It's mind blowing. I don't know who would. Yeah, there's a surfeit of logos in my field of view. And yeah, these two teams are from NBA or American markets 25 and 50 or whatever it
Mhm.
is. That's the deal. That's who the teams are. And when the Colts play the Steelers, we don't get upset about it. I think it's a great finals. I love how the Pacers have taken it to OKC. And one more thing. Sorry, I've been
No, no,
filibustering.
no.
It's funny that Oklahoma City, this is just pure psychology and how we root for the underdogs. I'm like, oh, OKC, that big bad dynasty. They haven't won anything. They should be the lovable upstarts. But because they had such a
Mm.
good regular season and a dominant playoffs, they code in our brains as Goliath. When,
Yeah.
I think Goliath had a better track record of picking off Philistines than OKC does. They're still David in many
Yeah.
respects.
Yeah, Goliath looks normal sized on the road when he gets out of the Middle East. At that point, he looks a little bit more like a David, as it were. Yeah, I had some people texting me in the NBA world that they league should want Indiana to win because they've got personality and they've got pizzazz, and there's just something about SGA. I suggested it might be an American aversion to the Toronto accent, and that was shot down as ludicrous. I was told Arnold Schwarzenegger became a huge star in our
Okay.
culture with his crazy accent. So therefore,
As
that's
did
not the
Ava
problem.
Gabor. I mean, the examples abound.
Yeah. So maybe that theory isn't such a good theory. Trace, let's bring on a question asker slash comment maker slash. Oh yeah, we got Craig. Oh yeah. Can we unmute Craig? Let's
Yeah,
hear it,
I'm
man.
here.
How you doing?
Good. I have a question for you about Berkeley. I maybe I misinterpreted things you said in the past on your interviews or your articles,
Oh wow.
but it sounds like you did not have the best experiences Berkeley. And what was your experience at Berkeley like? Could you expound upon that? Especially, I think 2 weeks ago you kept extolling how great Stanford was.
Oh
So, what
my
was your
God.
experiences in Berkeley?
I
If Craig pulls back, is he wearing Stanford Cardinal colors? What's going on
Oh,
there?
this is just
oh
regular
my
red.
Regular red.
oh my God. So I could not have predicted, given what we discussed earlier. If you gave me 1,000 guesses, I could not have guessed the first question on this here show about my complicated, neurotic, just ambivalent feelings about Berkeley. Going there, I don't think I had the greatest time, and I don't know if that was my fault, but I also think it's a very large school and it doesn't inculcate the biggest sense in one of being part of a thing. Now, I'm going to have Mike Silver on my podcast next week to talk about his book, The NFL Journalist, former Daily Californian writer. That guy is just the biggest go Cal Bears pom pom waver there is in the world. So he might look at me like I'm crazy and look at me like I missed something. I continued to live in the area, but I just felt like there wasn't much of a connection between the institution of the school and myself. Now, for the town, which is a different thing, the town, I do think, has a deep darkness within it. This was a take I did not expect to get into. And the New Yorker writer, J. Caspian King, when he moved out here from the East Coast, I told him this. And he looked at me like I was being negative. He looked like I was being cynical, maybe even right wing in his estimation. I don't know. And then about a year later, I met up with him and he said, okay, I see where you're coming from on this. I understand it. There's just something incongruous about a town that's really into a certain kind of politics and might even be a little bit pro-Marxist or whatever, where every house is $2 million in price. And I feel like a house divided cannot stand, whatever you want to say about it. It just creates this weird condition where something is off about Berkeley. But to be fair, Craig, it might be in my own mind. I don't know. Those are my feelings. It's a beautiful town. Beautiful. Natural beauty, great food.
Do you think it's because I know you're from San Diego and I know it's all California, but San Diego is very different from Berkeley. I mean, politically, it's more one of the more conservative cities in California, and the weather, like Berkeley's foggy all the time. Do you think that affected it at all?
Yeah, let me get my San Diego voice going for this question. Yeah, I think San Diego's weather is a lot better, and I really don't like how in San Francisco this week it's a high of 59 degrees. And I know that Mark Twain quote, everybody likes to laugh at it and think it's cute, but I don't really think it's so great. And I kind of think that the weather here is closer to Seattle than San Diego, as people from outside here might assume. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to do the rest of the show in that voice now.
Do you think Berkeley is underperforming for its undergraduate experience because they don't have to, just given there are no market pressures, there you have way more applicants than they could ever get to, 100 times more?
Yeah, I think there could be something to that. They shove you in these little sardine cans, these units, they're unit apartments. And I had 3 to a room. And I think it's also expensive. It just doesn't seem that great, really, I would say. But it's got a certain cultural cachet. I think a cachet, a reputation that was in conflict with the reality when I was there. The people around me were engineering majors and business majors. They weren't into protesting. Maybe that's changed. I don't know. But look, it wasn't a bad experience. It's just, I can admit, I can be honest. I did not apply to Stanford. I did not get rejected by Stanford. I've got no complex about it. But when I went there, to drop a name, Mike, when I went there to get a tour from Sam Presti, not Sam
Oh,
Presti, Sam Hinkie. That would be weird if
oh,
Sam Presti did that. He
still
usually
interesting.
it's like, why is Sam Presti doing that? It's not his remit. He should be giving me a tour of Oklahoma, which he does. He gives tours of Oklahoma to people. But Sam Hinkie, the other GM, I thought this is just beautiful. It's utopian. Let's just admit it. It's way better. I have no issue doing that. I know it's sacrilege.
And did he tell you, look, even if you don't like it for the first year, first 2 years, trust the process?
I don't know if he casually drops that. Here's what I'll say about Sam Hinkie,
Oh,
folks.
yeah. Does he run away for the quote most associated with him? That's interesting.
Here's what I'll say about him. There is an image in people's minds of that guy. For those of you who do not know, Sam Hinkie became archetypal or symbolic of nerd GM who thinks he's smarter than everybody else and doesn't understand the human element. If you talk to him in private, in person, because he doesn't give many interviews, it's almost jarring because he sounds a lot like Kenny Powers. His voice sounds like Danny McBride. And so that's the guy that you're interacting with. This is very valuable for everybody to know. I don't know if we've necessarily tread any new ground in how the WNBA or the NBA should be run, but it was interesting. I got derailed. I got detoured right there, and I started dropping names, Mike, as happens.
I liked it. I didn't know that you were given a tour by Sam Hinkie. That's really awesome. No
Yeah.
NFL top brass gave me a tour of Emory when I went there.
I also once discussed Berkeley
Mhm.
with the how would we describe Michael Anton, the rightist,
Yeah,
is
his
he a
Flight
paleocon?
93 author. Yeah.
Yeah, the Flight 93 election guy.
Yeah.
And he had a slice of Zachary's pizza. And I was trying to engage him on subjects. And he just kept turning back to the Zachary's pizza. And he would not deviate from his conversation about what a glorious slice of pizza this was and how perfect this was. So that's my
Wow.
that's my other name drop. Okay. Okay. Well, if we don't have any other pressing questions, I want to discuss something else. I want to go into something dangerous, Mike. I want to go into politics. Are you okay? Can you do that?
Yeah,
Is that something
yeah.
you can do
It's
with
what
me?
I do. It's
You
what I
know?
signed up for.
Because I feel like you kind of glanced at something. I felt like you talked about a dynamic and I looked at it, and in my criticism of you and my criticism of you, it just runs rampant.
Oh yeah,
I
the
felt
scathing
like
criticism. Felt
you
that.
might have missed a bigger story here.
Okay.
You wrote about the Terry Moran tweet about Stephen Miller
Yes.
leading a Moran exodus to Substack, and you predicted accurately that he would do really well on Substack. There'd be a
Yes.
bunch of people. And then you posted all these people who have left the very mainstream, the tippy top of the mainstream, and they've come to Substack. And this chart that you had, it blew me away. It really did. I don't know if we can throw that card up on the screen or if we've got that handy.
This is
I
from
believe.
on the gist list. Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
You gussied it up. Yeah. So every day on my Substack, I put out a thing called the gist list, and Terry Moran was in the news. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while. But there is, yes, I called it the mainstream media martyrs. This is the game plan. This is what you do and how you have to do it. Is that where you were going?
You think that's where I'm going. I was going to have you guess, but that's not necessarily what I'm observing right here. What I'm observing right here is the massive market power of the liberal baby boomer. That's what I'm
Uh-huh.
observing right here. Because look, we can't interview everybody who's subscribed. And but I know, I know the type of person subscribing to Jennifer Rubin, to Dan Rather, to Jim Acosta, people who made big names in these mainstream institutions that just recently we felt as though that they had shrunk and they weren't so relevant. We were all going to Substack because we were part of this new thing. They're still here. And I'm tying this, Mike, I'm tying it to the No Kings protests and a lot of the pictures that I saw of the protests. And I say it descriptively instead of pejoratively. So many old people at those protests, so many oldies. And I
Just
found that,
descriptive, saying oldies, golden oldies,
yeah, golden oldies.
decrepit, no,
People
vibrant
in
oldies.
people in my family
People
going
of
to
whom
the
we say they live a rich, full life.
they do. They do. People in my family went to the protest, and
Yes.
I'm so interested in this, and I wonder if you are too. I feel like this is one of these other in between topics people don't want to discuss. I feel like it's unappealing to the left because they conceive of themselves as this vanguard of the future. And it's a threat electorally to the right because old people vote in such high numbers. So if there's this baby boomer faction that is asserting itself or trending liberal, that's something I did not see in my life. When I was a kid, old people weren't mass protesting against the president. That's not something that existed. It exists now. I guess first of all, Mike, am I observing something that's happening? That's number
Yeah,
one. Then
that
we
I
can
mean,
discuss the ramifications.
I didn't realize it was rampant or this was the norm, but that's the norm. And my in-laws, this is what they did. We're going to the No Kings protest. They take part in my father-in-law takes part in every protest that you don't know it's a protest until afterwards he tells you, oh yeah, I did the postcards for Trump Day. I'm like, there was a postcards for Trump Day. I actually came across his postcards and they were increasingly hostile. Don't worry, the
Mm,
Secret Service is not visiting him, but he really is upset with Trump. And that media martyrs list, if I had known you were interested in the idea of
oh,
the Substack star who's over 60, that's so many of them. That's
yeah.
Dan Rather's on the list, but Heather Cox Richardson, she's 62. The number 4 bestseller the bestsellers in U.S. politics on Substack are The Free Press, Heather Cox Richardson, Midas Touch. Number 4 is Robert Reich. He's got to be 70. Harry
Speaking of
Litman's up
Cal,
there. He's an old guy. And a guy ran across at a Substack party that I actually texted you from. I didn't even mention this because I was a little underwhelmed, but Paul Krugman was there. And my wife, Michelle, said, did you ask him to do a Substack live? And I said, I did not. I just was, I'm not anti Paul Krugman. I just looked at
no.
Paul Krugman and I wasn't bursting with 100 questions to ask him.
I feel like I know what's happening there because I struggle with this. I need somebody who isn't going to be a PR voice of a cause. And I think Krugman, I would just expect him to be lockstep and not be able to go, oh, I got this wrong, or
Yes.
this gave me self-doubt, or
Right.
the other side has a good point on that. I just wouldn't expect that from him. But he's somebody I once saw speak at Berkeley when he wrote a book. Can't remember if that was Conscience
Was
of a
he
Liberal.
protested by the left?
Nobody protested him. In
No.
fact, they treated him like a hero because he was sick and he powered through it and he gave a
Oh
speech.
man. But
Yeah,
wait, let me ask you this. Do you think
sure.
people like you and I overpraise, not contrarianness, but just that trait that you put your finger on? Like, that's why we like Nate, maybe Matt
Mm.
Iglesias, people who are willing to, maybe I'm not even picking the two best ones, but people who know that it's very important to be interesting. And that means don't go with the doctrinaire lockstep idea. Maybe the doctrinaire lockstep idea happens to be right more often than someone who values being interesting.
Yeah, I think that that can be a problem, contrarianism for its own sake. I think for me, it's more the feeling of it's not honest when you're on autopilot, when you're effectively an AI for one cause, when you're
I know. I
effectively
totally
so
agree.
mimetic. I just don't want to interface with that. But I do see that happening sometimes, especially in a competitive information economy, market economy like Twitter/X, where the obvious take is just something that's sometimes uncool to say. So yeah, that can be an issue. I'm interested in the baby boomer cohort in general in this aspect specifically because I think what's happening partially, sort of like how the WNBA wasn't ready for how things actually shook out. I feel like we got used to the rhythms of life and we were used to when the old got old, they were immediately irrelevant, immediately get off the stage. But we keep people alive for longer nowadays, and it doesn't go so quick. And they do have a voice, and they're crushing us on Substack, Mike. They're killing us. They're
Well, they're
bigger than us.
all the yeah, but all the other outlets are, except for Facebook, they can't really interact with. And No Kings is a real life protest. It probably was mostly organized via Facebook. I know that postcards thing was. I think that I did another very baby boomer event. I went to Seattle and I interviewed Jake Tapper and Alex for their book. And outside the world of everyone being mad at Jake Tapper online, in the real life world, he is the number one bestseller. And all the 70-year-olds who went to the PBS event loved the guy, or at least were very nice to him and seemed to love the guy. So it's like, what is real life? Uh, I think that that cohort, there's a lot of them, and they don't interact on Twixt,
I
X to say
like
nothing
that.
of Twitch. Yeah, they don't interact betwixt the Twix or the Twitch. Like they're real life. They're just old, but they're gonna stay around for a while thanks to all the drugs.
Well, and I don't want to be too judgmental, but it does seem like they are easily propagandized. And it does seem like whatever's going, like the TV really matters and the messaging of the TV, it really gets through. And maybe we all are easily propagandized, and I'm deceiving myself, and I'm easily propagandized, but there's something to their earnestness. They lack a cynicism of the Gen X and the younger generations. They're writing postcards to Donald Trump, for instance. I can't see a young
Yes.
person doing that. I look at there's a tweet from Nathan Hochman, who's a young Zoomer rightist who I think used to work for DeSantis and I think got forced out, but he was sharing
Like
pictures.
embedding possibly some Nazi imagery in the back of ads. Was that the
I
guy?
I mean, I don't know if that was his call. I don't know
Yeah.
what calls he made or didn't make. I just know that he had a tweet about the boomers,
Yeah.
about the liberal baby boomers. And he said the boomer liberal version of patriotism was always extraordinarily shallow. It was premised on a conception of American identity that essentially just boiled down to, quote, being liberal. And he was making the argument that there was an earnestness here, but it's also good that it's going away. I don't know if it's going away anytime soon. We got a lot of pharmaceuticals, Mike. I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay. I think that's mostly, I don't want to be too harsh. I think that's mostly nonsense. And it's not that, they didn't see the world. The scales never fell from their eyes in the way that we, the red pilled or black pilled or whatever pill, they didn't
Gray
even take
pilled
the
for
pill.
us, I think.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
we are.
So I think what happened is a couple theories. One is that the radicalizing news events or events that we lived through, me to some extent, you to a great extent, were the Gulf War and the lies there and then the Great Recession and the lies slash inability of, let's say, neoliberalism to forestall that. And the baby boomers more or less escaped that. They escaped that a lot more than everyone else who had to pay the price. Yes, as citizens, as tax-paying citizens, they paid for the wars, and maybe they had relatives who went, but they didn't go. So yes, I do think that the radicalization kind of escaped them. Then again, they're the Watergate and Vietnam generation. So they don't believe in just the faith of institutions, full stop, like the people did in the 1950s. But my other theory is that, like, why is Dan Rather so popular? Because he's good and has talent. I don't know. I'm not going to denigrate Dan Rather.
His
Someone else
metaphors.
would say, well,
Woo!
because he's for. I think he's talented for what he does. Because he's familiar, and he comes from the time of the monoculture, and everyone who was just in your home during the heyday of the monoculture is going to become famous, and that's how you get followers. But how about this? He appeals to a demographic, and this does fit in with what you're saying, who wants to believe, who wants to hear a voice of God or the inheritor of Walter Cronkite say things, and then they want them to believe true. To believe they're true. And there's not a big reason for them to disbelieve them. And maybe the cynicism, which is based on fact, but also based on online presence and social media that the baby boomers escaped, maybe we'll never think about it like that.
Yeah, they want earnestness. They want somebody to shout, "Have you no decency, sir?" That's what they want. I need to be more decent to the callers. I need to take some calls. They might return us to sports. They might keep us in politics. I don't know. Let's have Ryan S. Let's bring him up to the floor. So Natalie attired with the collared shirt.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, Ryan, what have
Oh,
you
wait.
got for us?
He's mad
So
a little bit. No, he's not.
I think I will be taking us in a different direction. I don't know if this topic came up because I joined late today. Super excited because the under 20 men's national team beat Hungary in the semifinals of the World Aquatics water polo tournament. So they're going to be in the gold medal match tomorrow.
I want to do my best LeBron. Yeah, man, I saw that. That was crazy. That was great.
So anyway, so what I want to say is
I literally had no idea what sport you were going to name, and I did not expect that. I lie.
Well, thanks, Mike. I wanted to go into the new NIL rules and how that might affect Olympic sports, if you guys have any opinions there.
Wow. I'm woefully unprepared to answer that. How the NIL rules will impact Olympics. Well, okay, let's hear from you. I want to hear it from you because I have underprepared on that. So you give me a prompt. Let me investigate this for a future article.
I'll be completely honest as well. I'm still digging into the whole topic. But as I understand it, the new NIL rules set essentially a cap on how much universities are going to be able to spend on individual athletes. But what I also understand is this may leave more available monies to institutions to be able to support, historic Olympic sports.
Yeah. Well, that could be something that could impact America's balance of power and could get more medals. Oh, hello. Hello. What's your future sport? What's the future sport for this one? Not that one is needed. Don't need all that pressure. Uh-oh, we have the mute.
There we go. I'm unmuting.
We have
this
a
is
cute
Charlotte.
Mute. Hi, Charlotte.
Charlotte, say hello.
Hello. How old is Charlotte?
Is she good at treading water? Can she be a water poloist?
We're working on it. We did swim lessons today. Charlotte just turned 4.
Nice.
Very impressive.
Yes, you silly girl.
Well, Charlotte, next time I'll try to come up with an answer to your father's question. And I think that does open the door for something a little new. But as with all things NIL, man, there are so many externalities that are hard to predict because they've basically blown apart the structure of college sports. And I think that in general, it's an interesting topic because it's one of these things where a lot of people like myself in media had a theory of the case that this would all be good because it was unfair. That it was professional, but we weren't treating them as professionals. But then we also could not admit that doing this would maybe break what people liked about it. And that seems to be part of it. I know that's not the Olympic part of it, but that's something right there. So,
Yeah, I
Ryan,
liken it to, having made this analogy on this show, I liken it to New York City's pot rollout. It was unfair to keep it
not in front
illegal.
of Charlotte, Mike, please.
No,
Appropriate.
we've
It's
destigmatized both
okay. It's
pot
okay.
and to some extent water polo.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you,
It's
Ryan.
crazy Jamaicans / Hungarians.
Yep.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Charlotte. Can we get Aaron on? Mr. Aaron Reyes.
Aaron, if you don't have a cute toddler to present,
No.
that last segment is going to be where viewership spikes.
Oh no, he's repping the Dodgers.
I got
San Diego voice
Shohei,
is gonna.
baby. I
You
got
just think it's
Shohei.
okay to bean players like that? You
Yeah.
think it's okay to bean Tatis repeatedly? It's absurd. Oh my god. Okay, fine. Let's
Hey,
hear. Let's hear
hey,
what you got to say.
actually, to fold that into the earlier conversation of WNBA, I think it's great. So my era, I'm not a boomer, but my era of basketball definitely is the 80s and into the 90s. And it's just, there was nothing as amazing. And I'm a huge sports fan, but there's nothing as amazing as 1980s NBA, the East especially. I'm from the West Coast, but I live in the East Coast. But the East was war.
So you're talking about, for those who don't know, the Padres and Dodgers smacking each other up. That's what you're talking about.
And by the way, the WNBA, the same thing. I had this sort of, protect our little baby CC kind of conversation the other day. And I'm a huge CC fan. I love her. She's great. She's great for the game. All these other great women coming out of college are amazing. And I actually think there's a bigger WNBA discussion, which is how the NBA has constrained the WNBA for well over a decade of expansion, not investing, kind of playing this sort of fake game of, oh, it doesn't make any money. Well, you can't expand, you can't sell. We have the NBA. I put an article in the chat. The NBA has a 42% ownership in the NBA and in the WNBA and doesn't invest, right? And what they're really saying is, well, we have a put option on the WNBA, and now that's getting kind of called in. I actually believe what should happen is kind of a private equity thing that basically buys out the NBA and just lets the WNBA rip and just get to, not immediately, but get to 24 teams over like maybe 8 years, something like that. And because I think the big thing is, if you look at how much talent's produced in women coming out of college, right? And college is like the minor league system for it. I mean, there's a tiny number of women that are making it, and they're all going to Europe. European leagues are getting better. European women from those countries are getting better. And we're actually, we're keeping the elite of the elite, of course, but they're just, the talent pool is there to have 12 more teams over the next 8 years easily. And I think in this market, you could sell those teams off for minimum 300 million a clip, if not more, maybe 500, and just transform the sport. So that's my kind of business of WNBA take, and then actually that leans into.
Wait, Aaron, let me interrupt you. You
Sure.
think they should have expanded to 24 teams? What was the average game attendance before Caitlyn Clark got into the league?
Oh, we're grilling Aaron. I like it.
Yeah, it was like, the average attendance was 4,000, but it wasn't promoted. They didn't have a TV deal. They had to live.
Did. They were on Lifetime, the network for women, but also some ABC
Yeah,
in the
come on.
afternoon. here
Like
and there.
one thing we know about sports, especially women's sports, is this idea that you're going to sort of gender demographically target them to people who don't watch the sport doesn't really work, right? And you get a little bump, but it doesn't really work. Because if you look at the demographics of who's watching now, it's sports fans are watching now, right? And it's got the same kind of percentages within range.
Yeah,
the normal
I
sports
attribute
fans.
most of that to Caitlyn Clark. I would say pre-Caitlyn Clark, you'd have a tough case to make. We need twice as many teams if we're getting 4,000 people.
It's not just about team expansion. It's about marketing and packaging it. It's about allowing the game to grow. See, this is the game we wind up playing a lot of times in sports, to be honest. And where you see the difference, to be blunt, is women's soccer in Europe, right? Because these women, the teams, the club teams are stacked underneath the men's teams. So when you support Man City or you support Barcelona, it's part of your stack support of that club, right? And if you had, the equivalent of the Lakers or, whatever, the Celtics or somebody else.
You are preaching to the choir. I don't know if you know, I got crushed for saying as much. This is one of my one of my few viral controversies is I was on the Bill Simmons podcast and I said the WNBA should have had the same name
Yep.
as the NBA teams it was
100%.
playing under, as happens, as you're saying, in Europe for the soccer clubs, and it's
And
great.
basketball, but we forget that for basketball in Europe too. Right?
I know. I mean, look, big violin out for me, content creator. I got aggregated and crushed like this was sacrilege. What an idiot. Obviously, the team locally should be named the Valkyries and not the Warriors. What am I thinking?
Exactly.
So, it's hard. It's hard when, again, this thing has been run not in the interest of accruing interest, not with the aim of growth, but instead that kind of hipster thing of we want this to be our own thing. We don't want interlopers. And even if you can provide us with all this money and opportunity, it's not what we're about, which is why I favor my NBA hostile takeover / whatever you're discussing with the equity coming into it. And I don't even know what. It just feels like something should change. Very great stuff, Aaron. I don't know if Dustin Eden wants to ask a question. I see him. He doesn't have the hand up. I don't want to call him, if he doesn't have anything. I think that would be rude. It would
I
be
think he put
mean.
something in the chat.
He put some in the chat. He's thumbs up. Should we get Dustin on the floor? Okay, let's get Dustin in there. Thanks so much, Aaron. Let's get a Dustin in there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he needs to put a hand up for it to be possible. Think I understand how technology works? You would be wrong, people. There we go. There's Dustin. Now he's
There we go.
unmuted.
Perfect.
Let's hear something, man. You've got a great setup.
Aaron's far more educated on the WNBA. I don't have stats to bring to the conversation, more anecdotal. I was at the gym the morning after Caitlyn Clark came back from her injury, playing against the Liberty. Liberty were undefeated. She goes off. She's shooting from 35 feet out. Just incredible to watch. They play NBA highlights at the gym all the time. They've always got on ESPN. Nobody's watching the TV. I looked around during the Caitlyn Clark highlights. There's like 6 muscleheads at Gold's Gym. Just absolutely fascinating. Just watch. I mean, it's amazing how much attention she generates. So I'm just super curious, the reaction to her within the league, right? You would think, given all of the additional attention and ratings and popularity that she brings, why there seems to be so much animosity within the league, and even with some of the commentary around the league. And then where it goes from here, right? Like I'm fascinated. Are they going to start freezing draft cards so that they can build a roster around her over the next few years? Are they going to do the traditional NBA style conspiracies to build things up and build her up even more? Where do you think this goes over the next couple of years?
Man, I can't get away from this league. This league is too interesting. For a while, I wanted to stay away from it. I really did. And my friends would make fun of me. But then those same friends can't stop talking about this stuff. The same friend that tells me, shut up about the WNBA, I don't care, will then come to me and go, did you see this clip of this attractive blonde woman, Sophie Cunningham, putting this woman who knocked Caitlyn Clark over in kind of a headlock and causing a brawl? What's going on with this? I need to talk about it. This is great theater, great drama, great TV. Why is she so resented? Caitlyn Clark. Now, there have been people who have attributed it to I should attribute it to race and that sort of thing. But there are white WNBA stars, so it's sort of hard to say that it's all about that. I think that there might be an element. I'm not saying this is all of it. Clearly the league has been completely irrational and crazy about her and resentful to a degree that makes me think they are crazy. I also think that she's so polished, and that polished presentation and persona and projection of humility cuts against what she's actually like, which is more of a Michael Jordan-esque killer. Somebody who got her coach fired, by the way, and was not shy about telling Time magazine about what a bum the coach she got fired was. That's Caitlyn Clark. Caitlyn Clark is the person shouting, "You like that," after that scuffle when she makes the 3 and rubbing it in. Caitlyn Clark's a person that when her teammate doesn't pass her the ball, does this dramatic, these gesticulations. And I don't dislike it, but I think that there might be, there's a type of person that in the NBA who would be resented that the older coaches would talk about. Alvin Gentry, he was an older coach. He would say, oh, he's an Eddie Haskell. That player is an Eddie Haskell. He's somebody who comes to you like butter wouldn't melt in my mouth, to use another old person ism, but that's not what they're really like. And I think with Clark, there's an element of that. There's an element of that. And then there's this element of, oh, the wrong element likes her. These MAGA people like her. We hate them. And we would rather nobody pay attention to us than these Fever fans come into the fold. We don't want that. You've got Dave Portnoy waving the flag for Caitlyn Clark. And that's something that they also dislike. And I think that's kicked up a lot of dust. But I'll tell you one thing. What's a little interesting to me about a dog that's not barking with the WNBA is that almost nobody's talking about the best player in the league. That's what's interesting to me. It's not Asia Wilson. She's fallen off, and it's awkward, I guess, to talk about that, but she's one of the good ones that they want to support, as opposed to big bad Caitlyn and her Fever fan MAGA people or whatever. Nafisa Collier is the best player in the league, and nobody's talking about her. I just find that interesting. Find it intriguing, Mike. Do you have anything you want to riff on?
Yes, I couldn't recall her name. I was like, oh yeah, the one from Minnesota. So that does tell you something, right? I think Caitlyn Clark, you can't take your eyes off her. The 6 muscleheads in the gym, I don't know if they're the wrong kind of fan, but it's kind of crazy to, I'll use the word, gatekeep your kind of fans. And maybe it is a consequence of the fact that this was never just a capitalist let her rip enterprise. I'll also add, and I think it's a stereotype and it's probably not true, but a lot of the people who are behind this stereotype of the female brand of leadership and success. Oh, what happened? Sorry.
I mean, we hear you. It looks like a test pattern for people listening and not seeing.
Well,
quite
anyway,
colorful.
The sentence was going to be the female brand of leadership. Yeah, that's that. And here I am. I'm all the way over here.
So many camera angles to the Mike Pesca experience.
For what you see. Now you see the magic. Yeah,
oh my
God. Word collaborative. The word collaborative is what I was going to use. Female leadership is collaborative. That's why it's different from men. Men are top down.
It's always good when you're talking about male-female differences and a bunch of technical difficulties start garbling your thought process when you're speaking extemporaneously. That's always good.
And then I'm going to come out with it. Females are dainty. No, not dainty. So anyway, their uteruses are going to fall out. Wait a minute. No, it was the camera.
Yes, it was the camera. Yes, that's why. I think we were tracking all of that. I think we understood what you were saying about it. It's also funny people kind of project their own parasocial ideas on the players and who they are and what they're about. And I don't know if everything that's projected on Caitlyn Clark right now is exactly who she is, I suppose is what I'm saying. But I think we should transition this to an HR, no HR, where we discuss in the wild world of sports when there should be consequences, employment consequences for certain actors in what is, I suppose, show business. So, Trace, do we have that card? Can we run that HR, no HR? Guess we're going to find out. I mean, if we can't, then I'm just going to have to discuss it. I'm just going to have to do it.
Or is it on the same cable as my original teleprompter? Yeah.
It might. Okay, well, then I will introduce it. I will introduce it without the art and the card. Joey Chestnut is back. He's back at the Coney Island July 4th hot dog eating contest. For those of you who do not know, he was banned from it in 2024 for doing a sponsorship deal with a vegan hot dog company. And therefore, I know that this is one Mike would love, was banned. But he has been admitted back. They have reconciled their differences. I present that one to you, and I'm going to juxtapose it against a different one. You are going to be my ruler, my arbiter, Mike, about which one is a worse miscarriage of justice. Was that worse than this? Rachel Demita, who is a big-time YouTube influencer, she talks about WNBA, former basketball player, and NBA to a degree, and is a sideline reporter for Ice Cube's The Big Three, has been fired as a sideline reporter for posting a highlight of the aforementioned Caitlyn Clark. The Big Three recruited Caitlyn Clark, they were spurned by Caitlyn Clark, and now they are punishing Rachel Demita for putting out a bunch of Caitlyn Clark propaganda. Which one is worse? And take that wherever you want to take that.
The answer is the hot dog eating contest is more acceptable because vegan hot dogs threaten the very foundation of hot dogdom in general. So perhaps Joey Chestnut could say, "Oh, this is just but an alternative form of eating," but take it to its logical extreme. It will save all the pigs and all the cows, but also put the entire idea of Nathan's out of business. Whereas Demita and the big three, yes, I know that she was spurned in the moment by, or they were spurned by Caitlyn Clark. But one day when Caitlyn's in her early 40s and the big three is still around, she'll say, sure, I'll put together a team, maybe of all different players who I got in fights with when I played for the WNBA. It's worse. What is the hot dog eating contest without Joey Chestnut? He beat Kobayashi. Remember when fat guys used to win the hot dog eating contest? Joey Chestnut doesn't have much of a personality, but they put one on him, right? With all the introductions by Tim Shea, who wears the boater hat and conducts himself like he's a carnival barker from the 1920s. And they play Baba O'Reilly, and Joey Chestnut comes in a horse-drawn carriage. It's amazing. So yeah, I think the greater indignity or the stupider thing was the big 3-1, but the one that of course, that I mourned for much longer was Chestnut out of the hot dog eating contest. By the way, one last point.
Yeah.
Beyond Meat and all these meatless meats, they kind of had their moment and crashed, didn't they?
Yeah, no, I felt that. I didn't think we would take it there in the show, but there was a moment where it was intriguing. And we might get back to that moment with the technology. They might be able to grow. I was at a conference with some people who were very confident that they could just create lab-grown fish that was delicious. And these were conservationists, and they were very interested in wildlife. These were not crazy, kooky people as far as I could see. These were serious, science-minded people, or at least they were able to trick me and make me think that they were sophisticated. Maybe in the future, they will get it the way it needs to be gotten, and the steak will taste like steak, and the burger will taste like burger. But there was a moment where I think the hype had people checking it out, and there's been a vibe shift against it. And that's what I see anecdotally.
My theory on that is that I think taste-wise, I know there's one of them, they can't get bacon. There's one meat that's out there that's the holy grail of the meatless people that they just can't nail. But, when I had my breakfast sausage patty at Dunkin' Donuts and it was meatless, it tasted fine. Maybe that's just the ketchup talking. But you know what I think really cut into it is as the meatless technology was, if not perfected, made adequate enough that if you were motivated to tell yourself it was just the same, then it really was just the same. That exact moment is when this backlash against ultra processed food came out. And meat is this meatless. It's the most processed thing. It just stepped on. The whole thing's a process. So I don't think that they saw that cultural trend and they got whipsawed by it.
Yeah, I think that's completely true, that the organic movement was also part of it. And now what seems big out there is eggs. Eggs are huge. Eggs seem like they're having a moment right now.
Yeah, because we took them away, right? We were made to feel what it was like to pay $9 for them. And now Zoran Mamdani is going to have not a free, but a city-run grocery store that apparently has access to the un-avian flu affected eggs. He didn't think we'd take it to the New York mayoral race either.
I think you're right. It helped the salience of it. And then politically on the right, eggs became a thing. Raw egg nationalist became a person about how that's bodybuilding, fundamentally bodybuilding.
Sure.
Eat 30 eggs a day and whatever.
Yeah. Rocky before his run when he was playing with his turtles, Cuff and Link. Yes. You ever do it? You ever put raw eggs in a drink and drink it down?
I've done that. I've done the Orange Julius where you do milk, raw egg, and orange juice. And it's quite delicious. And I've done it with a little bit of tahini right there.
I put some Metamucil powder in there.
I mean, that's a way you can go with it. Now, the recommendation, and look, you guys can ask more questions because we clearly are off on a jag right now. We are digressing to an insane degree right here. But
don't make it seem like we're just tap dancing to try to have something to say. This is what I want to say. This is all I've ever wanted to say to you.
Oh yeah. No, I'm being self-deprecating. I think this is a legitimate topic and I'm pretty excited to be discussing it. And I like that I have a platform to do it with.
Thank
Uh,
God you do. Remember when you were silenced when you couldn't talk about the egg right?
oh, it's a problem. As at the Athletic, I was so hemmed in. They never let me write about eggs. It's horrible. Tim Kawakami, he wouldn't even let me cover the 49ers or write about eggs. It was just so frustrating for me back
That's
there.
unbelievable.
But my one recommendation before I take another question from Aaron, cream fried eggs, people. Cream fried eggs. You might think that you should fry up your eggs in olive oil or in butter. That's just how we were raised, people. You put some heavy whipping cream in there. You put some salt on that heavy whipping cream. And when you put your eggs in there, the cream is going to fry up a little bit into these nice caramelized little fatty bits. And it's not going to get overburnt like it is with butter. And you're going to thank me later. So that's my
Did you teach? I
recommendation.
know you're a chef or a cooking enthusiast. Did you teach yourself these methods or pick them up along the way?
I think I picked them up along the way. And occasionally I asked YouTube and occasionally I asked the great former NBA writer Kevin Arnovitz. But let's have Aaron give us some pontification
So,
as
so,
we.
so quick thing.
Yes.
I always find it really fascinating and interesting when you find out something about somebody who's an expert at something. So the fact that you're into sports is great, but it's almost more interesting that you're into food and what your opinions would be in food. And I'm sure, Mike, you have something else. You're into alt punk jazz or something. It's like,
Sexology.
and no, but I mean, the point is I always find that's always a little interesting kind of sub niche that might be a little carve out you could do in a show. My question though was, what do you think about the big seismic moment, which is the Lakers $10 billion deal, which as a
Yeah.
big Laker fan and having to absorb the absolute living hell Groundhog Day for a decade and a half of, some of the worst managed large scale sports properties in
Yeah.
human history. It of this moment where there's a chance for them to really get transformed, and what do you think that's going to be like?
Well, it's like the Lakers went from frying up the world's best farm fresh eggs and some watered down, disgusting margarine to now having the luxurious heavy whipping cream that is the infusion of Mark Walters' money.
French quiche.
Oh yeah, no, it's so good. It's so good. I bantered a bit with Dom Rangula of Laker Twitter fame, and his real job is at Stratechery with Ben Thompson, but he's very bullish about it. I was trying to get him to settle down a bit, but I largely agreed with him that this was good for the Lakers, that they've been not the most professionally run organization and yet succeeding in large measure off their advantages, off their legacy, off their brand. Now, here's the worry, I think. Here's the worry is
And
that
off being in LA when the one other competitor was
They
just
didn't
a
make the
shambles
playoff
for
for
so many
7 in the
years.
last 14 years. I don't know.
Oh my God,
there have been
7 of
some
14
lean.
years. I'm a Knicks fan, so I can't believe your NBA
Yeah,
championship
but you
winning
have the
Lakers a couple of
Dolans.
years.
You have Dolans built in as your DNA excuse that,
Yeah.
it's like when they're gone, you'll actually be a rocket ship after. So
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I guess the thing with the Lakers that's a little tricky here is they've been doing things the wrong way, but no team has ever had as many things go right while doing things the wrong way as the Lakers. And it's this Lakers exceptionalism thing. I think Domin once had a tweet like this. All I know about the NBA is that you've got to just be really careful, draft really well, spend wisely, or be the Lakers because things happen like LeBron James just showing up and saying, I want to be part of this. Oh, and let's force Anthony Davis to be traded here. Oh man, look, it turns out that we can trade Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic. I guess that's something that happens when you're the Lakers. I think what's complicated though is that the Lakers have been doing things in a very informal, old NBA world way, mom and pop shop, where it's all about star acquisition and it's all about relationships. I have this dichotomy with the NBA of nerds and cowboys. And there are these charismatic deal makers and coaches and GMs who have cachet and they're former players, and it's all about the relationships. And even if he's not a former player, I would put Palinka in the cowboy category. And then you have these just, I need to optimize Daryl Morey. I understand the analytics nerds. And I think it's just been all cowboyed out with the Lakers. Jerry Buss was something of a cowboy. Jeannie Buss, maybe she's a cowgirl, whatever you want to say about it. I don't know. They've been doing it in this way that's not exactly downstream from organizational efficiency and what the calculator tells you to do. It looks like they're going to bring that in. And
Well,
I think they might lose a little of that old magic. That's all I'm saying. I think it will be better on balance. I think it's overall good. But some of the dumb things they did worked pretty well too. That's all I'm saying.
MGLA, that's what I call it. Make Lakers great again. So
I will make
think-
one point about this, which is it's not just the money. As a Mets fan, yes, having the money is good. It's not that the Wilpons were poor. Steve Cohen's actually smart, a strategically smart guy. Walter Guggenheim is like the most respected hedge fund, private equity fund out there. He's actually a smart guy. It's not just, it helps to overspend, but it's not just that he's overspending. So this will be good for the Lakers.
Unfortunately, yes, it will be good for the Lakers. Or fortunately, since apparently some of my viewers, some of my readers, some of my friends, some of my best friends are Lakers fans. So perhaps it's good. I don't know. We're supposed to wrap up. But okay, we'll get one question from Dustin, though. He's got the hand up. I just want to just lead us on out. I feel like I can't turn down that hand. I want to know. I've got curiosity. What has he got for us? Then we'll wrap it
Related
up.
to
and get out of here.
the Lakers sale, I wanted to
Yeah.
know, get your thoughts on how it's going to impact potentially NBA expansion. Former Sonics fan here, and it's killing me listening to you guys
Ugh.
talking about the Thunder. So
Sorry.
you do think it's
Sure.
possible with the owners' meetings coming up in July that they'll actually expand, and if Seattle could be one of the teams that gets a team back?
Yeah, I think it's less that it is cause for more expansion and more that's illustrative of a terrain that's more expansion friendly. And I think the new TV deal, these businesses, these NBA teams, they're not money makers. They're money losers for the most part. But the new TV deal helps stem that tide. It brings in enough money for you to hold steady at least. And that makes it a more intriguing asset for some of these big muckety mucks who might pay billions for a new team. And so that's what I see it as. I see it as if that's how valuable the Lakers are, if that's how valuable recently the Celtics are, then you're going to have buyers. You're going to have people wanting to pay the expansion fee for a new Sonics and whatever the Las Vegas team is. So I think it's a positive indicator for expansion. And I hope for you and for NBA fans in general that we have a return of the Seattle Supersonics. I think that would be a good outcome.
Great.
Okay.
I guess Silver doesn't feel guilty about it. Like, I guess Stern didn't feel guilty about it, but it really was a horrific decision and a
It was
poorly.
horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. They should make amends for it. But hey, I don't have any sort of savvy slick is what I was trying to combine there for the outro, other than to say that the questions and comments, as always, were wonderful. Mike, you did a fantastic job. We love your intelligent gregarity. You're looking
Thank
at me
you.
quizzically, but it is true. Don't you deny it. That's true about you. And thank you
I
to
am
all of
into
you out there.
vexillology. That wasn't just throwing it out there. That's my other
Okay.
area.
I mean, I didn't hear what you said. It sounded like fancy talk, whatever you said as I was
I tried-
talking.
Tried to fancy it up, cream egg boy.
Cream egg boy. Thank you
Not an
so
egg
much.
cream. That's my side of the continent. Yes.
We'll see. Oh God, I was gonna make some sort of dad joke about the cream that rises to the top in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Look, you know where my brain was headed with that. I'm not gonna actually realize that. But thank you to all of you. We will see you next time, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern. See you, everybody.